Amazing. Today we are live on the SEO Leadership Webinar. Today we have on an incredible guest. He is Gabe Ramos. He is the Tech SEO Consultant over at Adobe, and he also has previous Head of SEO and SEO Manager experience. So yeah, very excited to kick things off with Gabe. He currently has 6+ years of marketing and SEO experience. So Gabe, how are you keeping? Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been good. A lot of change in SEO, but it's been fun to keep up with and kind of work through.
Yeah, that's exactly why we're having these weekly webinars. We need to stay up to date with what's going on too.
Seriously.
It's insane. But yeah, Gabe, if you could tell us a little bit about, for our listeners that are tuning in, how you got into SEO and take us through a little bit of your career journey. You have
Yeah.
worked with some exciting companies as well in the past as well. So we'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I feel like I got lucky in a way because no one really means to get into SEO, or at least from most of the people I talk to. It's something that you kind of fall into. And if
Hmm.
you love it, then it's phenomenal. And that's kind of the same case with me. Like I was studying computer science at the time.
Okay.
And I thought, yeah, I'm gonna be a software engineer. That's my route. And I started working as a developer at this small company in Utah where I used to live. And as I'm starting to work in development, I'm going, I don't think I can do this for the next 30 years. I love development as a hobby. I love programming, using it in SEO has fun, but just that I just didn't enjoy it as much as I thought. And so one of the people I was working with, he was a marketing specialist. And it was a really small company. So the CEO is literally sitting right next to us. And I asked him, like, hey, is it okay if I help out on this project? He's like, yeah, go ahead. And it just so happened that that project was coming up with the title, description, and the main terms that we're going to focus on for those particular like product pages that we were building out at the time. We were building out the back end of this website. So all of a sudden being on the front end, we're like, oh, this is really interesting. This is really cool. And I loved it from there. It's a really interesting take because SEO really allows you to have a direct impact in some ways on the business itself. It's not just something like I'm working on the back end, this new feature launches. Now, people can use them. That's fantastic, honestly. So that's a real world experience. But when you get to see that your implementations, your content ideas, all of a sudden help the site grow and you get to see sales from that revenue increase, that completely changed my perspective on it and went on from there. Started working at a few different companies as a junior and kind of worked my way up to where I am now.
Excellent. Excellent. And Gabe, on that, one of the biggest probably struggles that we talk about SEOs too is their ability to sort of communicate. Everybody across like the web devs and UX all have their own sort of goals and stuff like that for the website. So coming from that web dev background, do you have any advice for SEOs on sort of how to communicate to web devs to get that sort of technical implementation?
Definitely. So one of the main things is I feel like a lot of different places have like different ticketing systems. And what I initially thought when going into SEO was, oh yeah, this project makes sense, right? Obviously, if you're in the team, it makes sense. You understand the viability of it, why it's impactful. Devs don't, for the most part. They're focused on the ticket they're getting after ticket because most of the time there's a huge backlog. And they are focusing on 5 different areas across 5 different teams. So the best thing you can do is and I'm going to split into 2. When there's a ticket specifically for a task, make it as specific as possible. Make it as, I wouldn't say detailed, but just cut down straight to what is needed and try to look into it beforehand. So if it's anything like identifying kind of where exactly the JavaScript, for example, there's a script that's being bloating up this particular page, link directly to the file and have that ready for them to be able to look at it if you feel fairly confident. Sending a broad message like, hey, the page is loading too slow won't help the dev in that situation. So being as specific as possible, being able to say, pinpoint exactly what file it is, or, this is the area that we're looking for. These are the specific, you want to cut down an image size, for example. Highlight those images as well. And then also understanding that although the use case is there, just again, being specific and making sure to, like, they have so much going on. They have 5 different tickets. anything that's going to help you automate that process, they're going to love as well. So that's something to keep in mind.
Excellent. And obviously coming from that web development background, I take it tech SEO was almost sort of second nature. In terms of branching into the sort of the content or on-page side of things, how difficult was that to grasp, or how quickly did you sort of learn that sort of side of SEO?
Yeah, definitely. Funny enough, it made sense. What I had to tailor over time was what opportunities and what priorities am I going to focus on. That was what took a little longer to kind of go through, because I feel like a lot of people jump at, high search volume, high opportunity. And that's how I initially went about it when I first started out. It was like, this has search volume, a competitor has it, therefore it must be a good content piece or a good content idea. And that's not always the case. So that was kind of identifying what was right for the user, what was right for the site, and also what was right for the way that we generated revenue was going usually kind of the ways that we focus on. And that took a little more time because it meant understanding the business, understanding the way that we go through conversions, and being able to apply content directly kind of to those areas that are going to lead to just a better user experience.
Excellent. Love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask on the topic of your career journey is very interesting, and you had jumped between like SEO manager, then into consultancy, and then into head of SEO, and then now have moved into Adobe as the Tech SEO Consultant. Yeah. We actually came we spoke to a few candidates recently who wanted to shift away from that managerial responsibility and become more specialized. And I wanted to know if there was anything that inspired that jump with you. And do you have any advice to SEOs that maybe are not that interested in becoming a manager or leading a team and wanting to specialize, and how they can sort of navigate their journey in that space? Yeah.
I think one, it's perfectly okay if you don't want to go into a managerial role. I met some phenomenal SEOs who just have said, I went to managerial roles and I like the individual contributor. They loved it, and that's what they really focused on. So that's first off the bat, it's perfectly okay to do so. But then two, as far as advice goes, I would say that I know a lot of people tend to specialize in, like, whether it be technical, whether it be content. I don't think you necessarily have to do that. I think it's really good to stay a little broader within SEO. I think that it is all encompassing, especially with how much it's changing. I think having a technical background, and personally in my belief, SEO is going to be getting more and more technical as time goes on, especially with AI and the way that's being looked at. So having a technical background is helpful. Learning the technical side of SEO is very helpful because it can be applied in a few different areas. But by being a little broader, you get to explore those different sides of marketing as well. So if you want to go, you don't want to go into managerial for SEO specifically, you want to take an individual contributor role, but then you could see yourself going into like bilateral movement into a different area. You have the technical know-how, but also the content side as well. And that's something that I've noticed has helped a lot of SEOs pivot into those different roles, just being a little more well-rounded and being able to contribute in all aspects of not only SEO, but other aspects of marketing as well.
Awesome. And you mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that SEO has been evolving quite aggressively. And also now that, tying it back into thinking that, like, Tech SEO is going to be more of the forefront within SEO. Are there any particular skills that you think SEOs that are focusing on sort of niching down into the tech SEO sort of field, are there any particular skills that you would sort of highlight to them to maybe focus on this year or moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's always good to have some front-end experience with being able to go through the basics, really. A little bit of front-end experience will help. The biggest one, in my opinion, would be any data analysis, whether it be data visualization, whether it be data collection, whether it be knowing how to use those tools is going to be incredibly important, just because although with the overall generation of AI and how things are coming along, there's also a wealth of data that's being thrown out there as well with this process. And that's where I found the most help. And that's where I found to be the most useful, because most of the time, what most SEOs are doing is it is data analysis, and knowing how to parse that data, knowing how to properly look through that and make the right decisions off that, whether it be to a C-level executive or VP or management. That's going to be a huge, huge part of it. So I would say the front end, yes, that's really important. But if you can focus on something, data analysis, understanding how to go through, how to sift through that, but most importantly, how to tell a story based off that data is going to be really important.
Awesome. And are you using any particular AI tools to help with you in your day-to-day? And do you have any advice to SEOs, well, tech SEOs that are looking to grow in their AI portfolio, if I can put it that way?
Yeah. There's a lot of different tools coming out. I don't necessarily use anything right now for as far as AI. Like I use it a lot to set up my workload. So for example, if I'm something as simple as a content brief, I may use it to create a general outline for me, just to kind of get a feel for like, oh, what am I going to send to the writer, or an SEO brief, for example. How can I replicate this template? So I use it for a lot of just making things more efficient. So if you can use it for efficiency, that's great. I wouldn't recommend anyone using it for content. Just there's a lot of talk going around there, but efficiencies, processes for, I wouldn't say data analysis, but just a general just outline for what it is you want to do next, or kind of like building out those processes or those next steps. That's the best way that I've seen it been used. Also, there's a lot of different ways you can use it with Excel, for example. And that's been a game changer too, because again, you can use it if you're able, if your company allows it, or if you use it on your, as a side project. If you're able to link like OpenAI with Excel, and you can have it go through that data, it makes the data analysis process a lot easier. And that can be done with a Python script that you can build out in like a ChatGPT or something along those lines. So if you're looking to learn how to like automate a lot of processes, it's really, really helpful, because you don't necessarily need to know how to program. You just need to understand kind of what it's doing. And it will build a whole script for you. And you can use that then to, again, analyze your data, automate processes, and especially with any keyword research as well. Like not on ChatGPT, but once you got all the data, you can use that as a way to parse through it. So that's where it's been really, really helpful.
Awesome. Cool.
Gabe, obviously coming from that sort of tech background and working up to sort of head of SEO, how important is sort of making sure that communication is right to the person you're speaking to? Obviously, when you get to head off, it's a lot more sort of maybe C-suite or particular clients if it's agency side. How important is it not to tech in like sort of heavy, or talks are in heavy tech jargon and sort of layman terms?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. And this is something I fell into when I first started too, was the way that I did not speak the language, is the way that I like to say it. I was very heavy on the SEO metrics, and not understanding that at the time, that is not what, if you're talking to someone at C-level, they don't want to hear about rankings. Like they care about it, but you need to understand kind of how to make those rankings be a part of their overall strategy. They're thinking very broadly. They're thinking creating conversions. How are we going to increase, conversions X, Y by this quarter? So you need to be able to bring into those terms. And so what I mean by that is, and I'll give you guys an example, is we had this initiative that we were going after. And one of the things that I had to do was we were presented to the CMO and the COO of the company at the time. And SEO was a very big part of this initiative. And as I'm going through my presentation, I'm noticing there's a lot of SEO jargon. And I ended up having to take that out and start kind of changing it from SEO jargon to general conversions. And what I mean by that is, there's a way to say, oh, we're going to increase rankings, our main terms to position 1, right? Very broadly. That's a hard sell for someone who doesn't really know what that means. However, when you can say, based on this general CTR that we're seeing across the industry and internally, we can see that, okay, if we rank position 1, 2, and 3, we increase traffic by X amount on a monthly basis based on these keywords and based on this cluster. Based off that data, now we can say, well, this is our internal conversion rates for this particular page, and we're going page by page. Now we can tell a story of, we're not just increasing rankings, we're going through and telling a story of, we're increasing the overall number of people coming to site, we're increasing our overall potential leads, and which then leads to an increase of potential conversions. And if you have the conversions that you said you increased it by 10%, let's say, now you have a dollar figure. It's a very back of the napkin general way to do it. Probably should look into a little more if you're presenting it. But that's a good step that really helped me communicate that, because now I'm going from, it's not as simple, it's a little simpler, but also it's not as specific. It's very broad. And I can say, okay, like based off this, we can say that we're going to potentially, there's an asterisk there, increase leads by this much. And I think that always helps out. And that makes the conversations flow a lot better, because now it's, that you're speaking the language that they're looking for. That's their main objective, and understanding their main objective will give you a better way to communicate with them.
Definitely. And in terms, how does it go then in sort of the reverse way? How important is it whenever you bring on maybe more junior SEOs that you sort of teach them from early on how their work isn't just affecting sort of the SEO department or anything like that, how it is affecting like the wider business?
Yeah, it's and again, it's funny. I was in that position too, where you have to take a step back and look at how your work is going to affect other teams, but also the workload as well. And that's the most important part, understanding the workload of each team, kind of having some empathy for each team we're working with, because I feel like a lot of us, we say, oh, it's going to make sense. It's going to what we're going to do. And we miss out that every other team has 5 different tickets to go through. We miss out that they also have their own initiatives that we're very excited about. So taking a step back, being able to see that and being able to then properly communicate that across the team, and being able to say, oh, this is how this initiative is going to benefit this part of the website, which is led with the initiatives that you guys are leading, for example. That's kind of the way that I've approached it. And as far as like how to do that for a junior SEO, it's making sure that they have at least some time spent with each of those teams that they're meeting with. So it would be the content team, the dev team, setting time for them to chat with them, whether it be on a bi-weekly or even a monthly basis, for them to see the progress and understand kind of what that team has on the books.
Awesome. Just taking it back one step further, what sort of qualities would you look for when you are bringing on team members to join your team?
Yeah, I would say there's a few. Obviously, we have like anything technical is always good to have. The biggest thing with SEO, especially if they're starting off as a junior, is they're starting off fresh, and we'll kind of go from there. But they need to be willing to, it's like they need to be able to want to learn. They need to be able to want to kind of know a little bit more about not only the SEO side of things, but the business side of things, to kind of understand how SEO is going to be affecting that side of the business. But also, like there has to be a natural curiosity there that I feel like is very intuitive to SEO, because it touches on so many parts of the website of a business that you kind of need to, you're just constantly gathering more information. So someone that's very inquisitive in that way is something that I usually look for. And again, a technical background is always nice. I'm not going to say it's a must, just because I feel like most people can learn what you need to know for SEO on a technical basis. However, it does help because it's the part that I would say most of what I've seen, a lot of people tend to usually have a harder time grasping. So technical background, natural curiosity, and a willingness to learn is usually one of the key things that I'm immediately looking for in a junior. As far as like an experienced specialist, that's another story.
Awesome. I've mentioned this early on in the webinar, but you had a few bits where you were an SEO consultant for previous companies as well, like the Salt Lake Tribune and stuff. And I've been very curious to ask you, what was your sort of, if I can call it, an onboarding experience like with being an SEO consultant versus being an SEO manager or head of SEO? How do you sort of establish just incorporating yourself more into the team and the business as an SEO consultant?
Yeah, it's wildly different, I would say, because as a consultant, they kind of expect you to come and run. Some places have a decent onboarding to where they're walking you, they're having you meet the team, you feel like you're part of the team. Other places, it's they just want you to look and be able to pinpoint exactly what the next thing you need to do is. So for example, it was for like even working with Salt Tribune or working with a few other places that I've worked with, it's been very much, here's a bit of the issue that we have, can you fix it, basically. And your role at that point is to make sure to make those connections, to talk to people on the team, to also make sure that you are looking have access to the right data. And that's usually the funniest part, is like you may not have access to GSC like off the bat. So a lot of the time you're just trying to figure out what tools you need, and then you can kind of create the strategy from there. The onboarding experience for, let's say, like a SEO manager or head of SEO position, incredibly different, just because that one, there's a lot more you're sitting back and gathering a lot of data before you kind of jump onto the scene, as I like to call it. A lot of the times it's within your first few months, you're creating a strategy for the overall organization, depending on if you're just coming in or if they had someone in that position before. But that means that you're looking through understanding the overall plan from the CMO, the VP of marketing, and you're going through and aligning with the business goals that the company also has, on top of obviously anything that they need to fix. And usually you do an all comprehensive audit that involves every little aspect of the business as well. And you're trying to find obviously ways to optimize, but new ways in which we can grow the overall presence. So it's obviously going to be something you do for both. But on one end, you have something that you kind of have to figure out on your own. You're kind of jumping right into it. On the other, you really are getting as much help from everyone across the team. You're getting all the data that you need, and you're meeting with the CMOs, the VP of marketing. You have access to these people to kind of create that overall strategy, which is incredibly helpful in those situations. And usually looking at a little more long-term as well. And you break it down quarter by quarter with a strategy for, let's say, consulting, like a consulting gig or anything along those lines. You may create a general strategy that they want to use. And sometimes you implement it, sometimes you don't. And so that's something also where that differs there.
Awesome. And on the topic of, I actually wanted to bring this up. Have you ever worked on side projects before, and is there an importance of it to you? And are you still working on side projects currently?
Yeah, I feel like I always have a side project going on, and it's usually me testing out different ideas that I have. So, for example, I had a site on snowboarding, skiing, anything outdoors. I love snowboarding, I love skiing. So that's something I'm usually doing on the weekends. So I figured we'll build a site out of it. And what I do with that is I test out new content ideas, new different aspects of whether it be technical SEO, whether it be using AI here a lot more. And that's where usually I test with AI a lot, which is like, we're not writing content with it, but again, identifying those processes. What can it do? What can't it do? How is AI being used as a search tool, but also how it's being used as a traffic tool, for example, things along those lines. But I think it's incredibly important because it does allow you to get a hands-on feel for what it's like to run, whether it be a website, whether it be a small team, if you hire like a few contractors to write content, like all of a sudden you start looking at things a little with another perspective. As an SEO, you tend to really focus on just whether it be the traffic or other aspects of your role within that. When you're running a site, all of a sudden you have to create the briefs, but then you have to talk to the writer, you have to create the strategy, you have to go into the content, you have to also visualize the website, how are you going to build it, you got to go through the back and identify those processes that are going to allow you to be efficient in loading, uploading content, or making changes to the site. So I think it's incredibly beneficial just because it allows you to test. And a lot of, depending on which sites you work in at the level, a lot of SEOs don't have direct access to the website. I can go in and make a change on the page. So being able now to do that, again, now you have an understanding also of what that contributor across the hall, who's making those changes, has to do. And again, you can pinpoint exactly kind of where you can be more specific about instructions or a ticket or whatever it may be. It's really helpful, gives you a different perspective, and it's a lot of fun, honestly.
This is more like, I think, a sort of side quest question out of curiosity, but have you ever used part of your side projects to help you when applying for jobs, or is it just like a fun sort of add-on?
Yeah, I would say a bit of both. I think that you can definitely leverage your side projects as a way to use that as experience for a position or even a consulting role as well.
Awesome.
For me, at least personal experience, the site that I built helped me get those SEO manager roles. Because I was in charge of a team of 5 through the site that I had. And all of a sudden I went from being an individual contributor to being more of a manager and managing my own site, and being able to prove that had some traction, grow traffic there. Really, you can use those, like, especially with the data points, you can use specific data from those projects and go, here's what I've done. And it takes a little bit of time, but it is worth it when you get to put those data points into a resume or a talking point into an interview, and use that as a way to kind of reference your experience, and especially when you did it from scratch. And the way you talk about it too, when it's something you built yourself, very different. Because usually people get a little more enthusiastic as their eyes light up as they're talking about something they built from an idea to all of a sudden being able to say, oh yeah, we have 2,000 users, 3,000 users on the site. That's always, like, it's fun to grow something like that.
Awesome, that's it. And
Gabe, I know previously you worked as sort of enterprise SEO manager for maybe sort of junior SEOs who have maybe just worked sort of like national or sort of local SEO campaigns with smaller clients. What is one thing that they should be sort of preparing for whenever they make that jump up to enterprise level?
Yeah, funny enough, what I found was that so at least for me, I was working with a consulting firm, and it's so specific. So that was something that I noticed. But as far as a general SEO going into like an enterprise level, there's going to be a lot more processes they're going to have to go through. It's not going to be as quick. On a small, when you're working with small sites or you're working with a smaller firm, a lot of the times you have access to the site and go in, change the title, change the description, have the ability to, not freely, but you can go through the content with a content strategist or a content specialist and kind of put together ideas on how to optimize it. On bigger sites, you really don't have much access to the site itself. It's all going to be done through tickets. It's all going to feel a lot slower, and you would need to pace yourself a little bit more. And that's something that I noticed, especially when working with small sites to Fortune 500 companies. They're a lot slower in the way that they work, and there's more people involved. And that's something you're going to have to learn how to communicate as well, because what you used to be able to do just on your own, go into the site and change whatever you wanted to, now there's maybe 3 people involved, and that's their role. And you have to be able to communicate that and get their buy-in, and also work with them as well. So your team's going to grow, your patience will have to grow as well, and the processes are going to be a lot more refined as well. So that's something you give a bit of a heads up to when you're moving into those positions.
I always love asking this question in the last 15 seconds of the webinar. But as we're still like in the beginning of the year, trying to get as many answers as possible. But do you have any foresight or foreshadowing for what's to come in SEO for this year and beyond?
Yeah, I don't think it's dead, one. I think it's something that's going to change a lot. And I think we were alluding to this earlier, which was it's going to be very technical, in my opinion, because a lot of where things are going to start building in for SEO is going to be EAT and trustworthiness, authenticity. That's going to be a huge part of it. But also, I think everyone said this at this point, AI it has changed the landscape, and we have to understand that. If you're someone that is focused on informational or any informational content, you're gonna have to be incredibly authoritative in that sense, just because people are gonna very quickly get a glimpse of what they're looking for, the quick answer they're looking for, and they may not even be using Google. They may be using YouTube or ChatGPT or OpenAI, whatever it may be. However, local services are going to be something that on Google, it's going to, I feel like, do well, just because when someone's looking for something locally or something that nearby, they're usually going to go straight to Google. They're not going to go to ChatGPT or YouTube or anything along those lines. But I would say that, yeah, it's a lot more. And what I mean by technical also, it's going to be I think AI, and especially something like ChatGPT, for example, is going to be a huge traffic source for the next few years, if not the next year. We're going to see that a lot of the way that they're referenced, the people ask questions, whether it be for tools, websites, where to get access to certain things. A lot of the people they're going to reference the answers they get from somebody like ChatGPT. And that's going to be a great referring traffic source that I think is going to get even bigger than we're seeing it right now. So being able to understand how those tools are pulling content from these websites and being able to then, or what they deem as credible in order for them to give you like an answer, the same way that we see kind of Gemini doing right now in the SERPs. They're good. That's going to get a huge referral traffic source for a lot of different areas and all over industries. It's not just one specific industry. So that's kind of where I see it, and excited to see how that develops over time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Well, time flew with this webinar. But yeah, Gabe, thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, if anyone is listening in and wants to follow Gabe or ask him some questions, pop him through a follow and message him. Gabe, thank you so much for coming on. And
thank you guys. It was a pleasure.
Have a great weekend, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Cheers.